If someone can trigger your emotions, they can usually control your decisions, and you probably see this most clearly in emotional people. When something feels off, they don't like staying in that space for long in silence because they get a big sense of uncertainty. So they say something and try to smooth things over. And in the moment, it feels like being social and giving the environment a push. But in reality, their emotions are just deciding the direction. And when emotions start deciding the direction of your actions, you lose control over them. Control in real life usually doesn't come with shouting or threats. It shows up as pressure, usually to get a specific outcome right now, like someone wanting an answer out of you, or just changing their tone enough for you to feel the urge to give them whatever they're asking for. And when you're emotional, even in a normal human way, you respond to that pressure without realizing you're responding to it. You try to restore balance as fast as possible, and that's how control really looks like. This isn't really about anyone being evil or manipulative. It's just that emotions make us want relief, and relief makes us move. The tricky part is that emotional people often see themselves as the most genuine ones in the room. They're expressive and open, without really hiding how they feel. And honestly, that's not a bad thing. But there's a difference between feeling deeply and being led by those feelings. When emotion starts deciding the direction of your actions, it doesn't just affect how you feel in the moment, it slowly shapes what you tolerate and what you agree to give away. Maybe you've had moments where you look back and just think to yourself, why did I say yes to that? Or why did I explain myself when I didn't even need to? And this is where things start to split. Because not everyone reacts that way. In the same situations, under the same pressure, there are people who don't rush to close the silence just because it feels uncomfortable, and they don't try to match the emotional energy in the room. And at the same time, they're not cold or checked out either. They're just calm, and that calmness makes things play out in their favor. When pressure hits a calm person, it doesn't really affect them, and they prevent it from escalating. It just kind of fades enough that it loses direction. The person applying the pressure doesn't get the response they were expecting. The tone change doesn't make them feel urgent or even affect them in any way. And without meaning to, the calmer person keeps their freedom, simply because they didn't move when they were pushed. A lot of people misunderstand what calm actually is. They think it means being quiet or detached and being a person who does nothing, but it's really about not feeling rushed internally. A calm person still thinks and cares, but they just don't let emotions decide their next move for them. They usually pause under pressure, not because they're being tactical about it, but because they don't need immediate relief to feel okay. And that's what makes them difficult for some people to deal with. Not everyone, but those who are used to emotional feedback and reactions from pressure. But when that doesn't happen, it creates discomfort because the usual tools stop working and there's nothing obvious to push against. What's interesting is how differently calm people get described, depending on who you ask. Some people say they feel safe around them. Others say they're boring and distant, or just hard to read. Both reactions come from the same place, but they reveal very different needs. For someone who values stability, being with a calm person feels reassuring. But for someone who relies on emotional movement to feel secure, being with a calm person can feel boring. This isn't about right or wrong personalities. It's about regulation. Emotionally regulated people don't need constant feedback from the outside to stay balanced. They don't need immediate resolution to feel okay. They can sit in uncertainty without trying to escape it. And because of that, they don't give other people much control. Because control at its core needs access to your reactions and to your urgency. It needs access to your need of being understood right now. On the other hand, calm people limit that access naturally, not by being more intolerant, but by not opening doors automatically. They choose when to engage and when to stay quiet, which is clearly a sign of self-control. And it usually happens in tense conversations, when one person keeps explaining and circling the same point, trying to get something back, while the other is just listening and responding briefly without escalating. The calmer person isn't trying to win an argument, they're not feeding it. And without energy, pressure doesn't have much to stand on. This doesn't mean calm people always get what they want. It just means they don't get moved where they don't want to go. They're not immune to emotions. They're just not driven by it in the moment. That makes them consistent and somehow predictable in a good way. You know they won't explode or fold. And over time, that consistency builds trust. Ironically, that same consistency is what some people mistake for unpredictability. They don't follow emotional scripts. For example, if someone raises their voice expecting escalation and it doesn't happen, that expectation falls apart. If urgency gets applied and nothing speeds up, the sense of control disappears. That gap feels uncomfortable because something doesn't feel familiar. Most people learn early on that emotions is a way to influence the world. For example, crying gets attention, anger creates movement, and excitement pulls people in. That's not manipulative, it's just how humans react to emotions. But when those tools stop working, it forces a kind of self-awareness that a lot of people avoid. You're left alone with your own feelings, without someone else absorbing or reacting to them for you. That's why calm people can feel intimidating without ever being aggressive. They don't participate in any emotional tug of war, and when one side stops pulling, the game ends. There's also a social side to this. Over time, people tend to respect those who stay composed under pressure because they seem reliable. You trust them with responsibility, and you look for them when things go wrong. They become anchors in chaotic situations. At the same time, calm people don't always get instant popularity. They don't create create emotional highs or fuel drama. And for people who seek stimulation through intensity, that can feel boring. But respect and attraction often grow differently. What feels boring at first can become deeply appealing once you realize it comes with clarity and self-trust. A common mistake people make when trying to be calm is thinking they need to suppress emotion. That never works, because suppression creates tension. Real calm comes from allowing emotion without obeying it, and letting a moment pass before deciding what it means. That's not weakness, it's actually the opposite, and it takes discipline. But just to be clear, you don't become calm by forcing yourself to be quiet. You become calm when you realize you don't owe the world an immediate response. Silence doesn't mean you've lost or that you're unsure. Sometimes it just means you're giving yourself a moment to respond in a way that actually feels right. And once that sinks in, you explain yourself less, but your boundaries get clearer. You stop trying to manage other people's emotions, and without trying, you stop giving them control over your own. And I don't mean you'll become untouchable in a dramatic way. It's more about keeping your internal space intact, not letting every tone shift or expectation change the way you act, while staying present without being pulled apart. At the end of the day, calm people are impossible to control, because there's nothing loose to grab onto. They move when they choose to move. And in a world that constantly tries to rush and pressure you, that kind of calm is true freedom.